All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Hopefully you had a good week catching up on everything. Today we're going to start something new, but it's going to utilize the skills we learned last week with simplifying radicals. So today we're going to talk specifically about the quadratic formula. Okay, now the quadratic formula is something that is on the Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2, formula sheet. Now for us in intermediate algebra, we would always give this to you, but this is something that you want to have either written down somewhere or wherever it is. So x is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Now that's our formula. Now there's a lot of pieces to this. There's a lot of different pieces that go into this. So let's first talk about the difference between a quadratic formula and a quadratic equation. Okay, so for a quadratic equation, we have y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. All right, so for this equation here, a, b, and c are just numbers. They're going to be the coefficients that come in front of the different letters. Okay, so why do we care about this? Why are we going to use this? Well, we talked before we left about factoring. And when we were factoring, we were looking at examples. We looked at a couple different types of factoring, but one of the examples we looked at was x squared minus 6x plus 9. And if you remember when we were factoring, we wanted to be set equal to 0, okay? We didn't have to be, but we really want it to be set equal to 0, and that'll come up in a little bit. So if you remember, I have my TI-84. If you remember, this is the Calculate 84 app. If you go back on the Google Classroom page, there's a lot of resources there about how to use the calculator and how to get information on how to pull up a good graphing calculator. But this is the Calculate 84 app that we're using. And if you remember, we go to y equals, and in y1 we took that third number, okay, that c value, and we took that number to be 9, and we did 9 divided by x. And then if you remember in y2, we did 9 divided by x plus x. And it was always this case here. And then we don't care about the graph, we want the table, okay? And what we're looking for here, okay, what we're looking for here is we're looking for the third column to be our middle number. So we're looking for where the third column is our middle number. Okay, and there it is there. We scroll and we can see the third column is negative 6. So the two numbers that got us there were negative 3 and negative 3, and that meant that when we factored, we got x minus 3 as our factoring. Excellent. So what happens, though, when we're trying to factor? And what happens when we're asked to factor something like x squared plus 7x plus 9? So let's try it in the calculator. So we'll go back to y equals. It's still going to be 9 divided by x, still going to be 9 divided by x plus x, because that first number there is that third number, I should say, is a 9. Now the middle number is a 7, a positive 7. So in our table, we're looking for where the third column becomes 7. And you'll notice here that it doesn't become 7. It jumps from 6.8 to 7.5. So that is a problem. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean that it's not possible to factor? Does it mean that we can't solve this question? No. What it means is we need another tool, and that's what the quadratic formula is. It's a tool that allows us to be able to solve any question there is. So we're going to try and solve x squared plus 7x plus 9 using our quadratic formula. So we're going to use x equals negative b plus or minus, we put this plus and minus sign on top of each other, square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Now, as we said above, where we talked about what a quadratic equation is, we know that this lines up with our y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. So the first thing we need to do is find a, b, and c. So a is not, there's no number in front of this x squared, so there's really a 1 there. So a is going to be equal to 1. B is the number that comes in front of the x, so that's 7. And c is the third number, so that's 9. You'll notice for a, b, and c, I did not attach any x's. I didn't attach any letters. A, b, and c are just numbers. And now I'm going to go ahead and take those three numbers and plug them into my formula. So I'm going to get x equals, now negative b, so I'm going to get negative 7 plus or minus the square root of 7 squared minus 4 times 1, because I need a, times c, which is 9, all over 2 times a, so 2 times 1. Now, when I simplify this, there's a specific order I need to simplify in. I start by simplifying what is under the radical. What do I mean by that? You're going to use your calculator and you're going to type exactly as you see it what is under the calculator without plugging in the radical sign. Okay, so I'm going to plug in 7 squared minus 4 times 1 times 9. And I'm going to get x equals negative 7 plus or minus the square root of, let's see what that value is, square root of 13 over 2. I can multiply that bottom number 2 times 1. Now, I said that this was going to rely on that simplifying radicals idea that we looked at earlier. So on the side of my paper, I need to check if radical 13 can be simplified. Can I put it in simplest radical form? Well, the first thing we can check is it a perfect square? Okay, no, it's not. We got a decimal. So now if you remember how this works, we're going to take perfect squares smaller than 13, dividing in to see if we get a whole number. So the first perfect square less than 13 is 9, and I get a decimal, so that didn't work. So then after 9 comes 4, so I'm going to get 13 divided by 4. Again, I got a decimal, so that didn't work. And then after 4 is actually 1, and obviously 1's going to work. So because 1 was the only thing that worked here, we could really say that nothing worked. So radical 13 could not be broken down any further. That was it. If you could have broken it down further, you would here, and then you would replace it in the equation. Okay, so the way our answer is, there's two ways to write our answer. Our answer is either this here, which I've boxed in, read x equals negative 7 plus or minus radical 13 over 2, or, this is a big if, this is or, you could write your answer as x equals negative 7 plus radical 13 over 2, and x equals negative 7 minus radical 13 over 2. So what I did here was I took that plus or minus and actually broke it up, where I said this one's the plus, this one is the minus. If you remember when we factored that, we got 2 roots, right? The power is 2. There's going to be 2 factors here. Well, here we're getting 2 roots. Okay, we are going a little bit further with this quadratic formula. We are actually solving the quadratic, but that's okay. Okay, what we're looking to do here is just utilize the quadratic formula. Okay. So let's try a delta math example. You're going to have an assignment, okay, that's going to, so give you an idea of what I'm going to do. My plan to keep us as organized as possible is to always have, for the next couple weeks at least, we're going to try this out, see how it goes, but every Monday and every Wednesday there'll be an assignment that goes live in the morning. That assignment will include maybe something from Delta Math, maybe another website. It will include some videos on how to complete those tasks. It'll include some resources. And the idea here is that we're trying to show some different things, trying to show you how to complete that assignment. And we'll assign it on Monday morning, the idea being that you should have the first one done by sometime Wednesday evening. On Wednesday morning, there is going to be another assignment that goes live for those that did finish it, and that assignment would not be due until the end of the weekend. So you'd have 2 assignments each week. Again, there'll be videos, there'll be work to try on your own. That way we could kind of stay organized. You know exactly what to expect from us. You know where they're going to be. They're going to show up in the Google Classroom. They'll also be, again, most of the time on Delta Math, and you'll see those, and we'll be able to just keep a nice organized schedule. I think that will help you guys out immensely, and it also cuts down on the number of assignments for you, okay? So if we go to Delta Math, you're going to see a question that looks like this. Solve the equation for all real solutions in simplest form. So we have 3y squared plus 12y plus 4 equals y. Okay, so 3y squared plus 12y plus 4 equals y. Okay, and let's just make sure that that was the equation. Perfect. Okay, so 3y squared plus 12y plus 4 equals y. The very first step, which we're going to need here, sometimes you will need, sometimes you won't, is it must be set equal to 0. Set equal to 0. And to do that, we're going to move the y. Okay, that's going to be the easiest thing we could do here. So we're going to get 3y squared plus 11y plus 4 equals 0. Now I'm telling you here, all of these need to be solved using the quadratic formula. Okay, every single one of these need to be solved with it. You don't have to try and factor by hand first. Just go right to the quadratic formula. So if you remember with the quadratic formula, we're trying to match up with ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. That's going to allow us to say this is a, this is b, and this is c. So even though it's y squared and x squared, that's just the variable choice they used in the problem. So a is going to be the number 3 for us. B is going to be the number 11, and C is going to be the number 4. So I've got A, B, and C. Okay, so now that I have A, B, and C, I can plug into my quadratic formula. Okay, let's remind you what that was. So x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, so again, for each of these problems, you should be writing this down. Okay, you should have the notes so that if you do have a question, you know, Mr. Hayes, Miss Baker, Mr. Hurt, why am I getting one of these wrong? The idea being that you can sit there and say, you know, this is what I've done so far. Could you tell me where I'm going wrong? All right, so let's plug in. Let's see how this goes. So we got x equals negative 11 plus or minus the square root of 11 squared minus 4 times 3 times 4. Again, I plugged in A and I plugged in C. That number 4 is always there for the first number. And then I've got 2 times 3. Okay, so if you remember, the next step is going to be to just plug in what's under the radical. So for us, that is 11 squared minus 4 times 3 times 4. And that is the number 73. So I get negative 11 plus or minus radical 73. And I can simplify the bottom. 2 times 3 is just the number 6. Okay, so we're trying to simplify 73. So if you remember how this works, we're going to take 73 and we're going to divide it by the perfect square just less than that, which for us is 64. Now, if you need to go back to that video and look at your perfect squares, feel free to do so. Okay, that has a decimal, so it does not divide in evenly. Okay, after 64 is 49. So let's see if 49 divides in evenly. It does not, unfortunately. Okay, so let's see if 36 divides in evenly. It does not. Okay, so after 36 we have 25. That does not divide in evenly. After 25 we have 16. That didn't divide in evenly either. After 16, we have 9. That didn't work. We have 4 after that. Oop, division. That didn't work. Okay, so it looks like 73 is what we're stuck with. Okay, so here we're going to get x equals negative 11 plus or minus radical 73 over 6. So let's see how we can plug that into our delta math. Okay, so let's go back to our delta math screen and we're going to plug in the answer. Now, what we want to do here is we have the plus or minus button, we have the y equals button. Okay, so we need to plug this in. We're going to make use of parentheses here, okay, because remember I have to plug in everything divided by 6. So I'm going to start with minus 11. Let's see. Oh, let's clear out here. I'm going to get rid of this for just a second. Okay. Let's see if I can just get rid of it in general. Okay, there we go. Okay, so we're going to delete out what we have, and there's a fraction button. Okay, so that fraction button's not going to help us. Okay, so we want to do is we want to be able to plug this in. So how are we going to plug this in? Okay, so we're going to use our negative 11 plus or minus, okay, radical 73. Now, what you're going to notice here is we need to put this into parentheses. So let's go back to the beginning. And it even told us, right? It tried to help us out. And then that is going to be divided by, and that's where the fraction pops up, divided by 6. So it should look exactly how you have it on your paper. The big piece is you need those parentheses to get the fraction. Okay, we're going to hit submit answer. Let's see what happens here. And yes, we got it right. Okay, so it tells us the radical does not simplify, and there is our answer. Okay, let's try a new problem. Okay, so our new problem is 5q squared plus q minus 1 equals 0. You will notice here that it's already set equal to 0, so that's great news for us. Okay, so our next example, example number 2 from Delta Math, is 5q squared plus q minus 1 equals 0. So I'm only going to have that first step of setting it equal to 0 if it's not already set equal to 0. Okay, so the next step that I need to do here, because I've already set it equal to 0, is I line it up with my ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, and I need to determine what a, b, and c are. Okay, and a is going to be 5. B is going to be 1. There's really a 1 there in front of the q. And C is going to be negative 1. Now using my quadratic formula, which is negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you want to keep notes. I know this is remote learning, but you still want to have that remote learning notebook, right? So in your notebook, this formula should be written down somewhere, okay? These notes should be written down somewhere from this video. So we're going to plug in our values for a, b, and c, okay? So we get x equals negative 1 plus or minus the square root of 1 squared minus 4 times negative 1 times 5 all over 2 times 5. Okay, so if you remember, oh, let's get that for now. Okay, so we want to plug in what's under the radical first. So we're going to plug in our 1 squared minus 4 times -1 times 5. And we get 21. Okay, so x is equal to -1 plus or minus the square root of 21 over 10. Again, I'm just multiplying that 2 times 5 on the bottom. Okay, so does 21 simplify? Okay, 21 divided by 16 does not work. 21 divided by 9 does not work. And 21 divided by 4 does not work. Obviously, 21 divides by 1, that's not going to help us at all. So the radical does not simplify. So here as our answer, we've gotten -1 plus or minus radical 21 over 10. Let's see if that works. Okay, so go back to our Delta Math page. Okay, so on our Delta Math page, if you remember how we're going to submit this answer, we're going to start with parentheses and put the top in. So the top for us is -1, okay, plus or minus. I've got that plus minus button there. I've got my radical, so I'm going to hit radical 21. I have to go use that right arrow before I can close that parenthesis. Now when I hit division, it's going to create it as a fraction. It's also important to note that the Delta Math submission bar does not differentiate negatives and minus signs, whereas the graphing calculator does. Okay, so we're going to submit our answer. It's going to ask us if we are sure, and we are, and there's our correct answer. I forget specifically, but I think I asked you to do 7 of these. Okay, so just be careful, make sure that you're doing 7. A couple other quick questions that I want to answer here with this Delta Math assignment. The first is a lot of you have expressed concern that it's saying that you already have an account, and you're saying, I've never used this before, I definitely don't have an account. It's not that you already have an account, but if your name is, Jane Doe, J Doe is probably an already taken username. If your name is John Smith, J Smith is probably already a taken username. So it just means that someone else in the world, because Delta Math is used all over the world by high schoolers, but it's really just, a lot of New York schools use it. It's used by so many people that someone's already used your username. It's like when you create an account for anything, an email account or something like that. The reason that most of us have emails that are, J Smith 57 is because there are 56 other people with the jsmith email at gmail.com, so you have to be mindful of that. The other piece that I really want you to be mindful of is that you can always go to our page. So if I log out here, if I show you how I would log in, so if you remember, I created a username and a password just to demo this for you. So when I'm filming this video, the new assignment isn't up yet, but what you can see here is when I log in, this is what I get. Now there has to be a due date, so it's saying late credit available. The late credit is 100%. You don't have to worry. But I can see here that if I click on Simplifying Radicals Day 1, it'll say I completed 2 out of the 5 questions. Now if I want to go do more of those questions, I can click on it. And it can say, this is what you've done so far, okay? Now, if I look at assignment day 2, I've done 0 out of the 10 that are required for that, okay? And so I can go in there and complete some of the assignments. So it will tell you exactly how much you've completed for each assignment. This is there to help you. So I know there's been some confusion also on, well, how do I know what I've done? Delta Math tells you exactly what you've done, exactly how many you've done. Be careful, it does not stop you. So a few of you have done significantly more than you've had to. You've done 15 out of 10, or you've done 10 out of 5. It won't stop you, because the whole idea with this program is there to make you better. So even if you did the assignment, I required 5 questions, you got all 5 correct, if you're still struggling with the skill, this is there for you to do more and more practice so that you're prepared for a quiz, a test, anything like that. So one, I hope that this helps. I hope that this kind of gives you an idea of what we're looking at and things like that. But remember, this also gives everyone an opportunity to get that 100, to get that perfect score. You just have to be willing to put in the work and continue to get questions right. If you get 3 wrong, that's okay, right? If I go into my Delta Math assignment and I go to, do this and I say, well, it's 2 and, 5, and I'm just saying try that. Okay, not equal, okay? 2 times 5. Okay, so I got to choose something that equals 108. So let's do this So it won't even let me, so here let's do 54 and 2. Okay, so, right, one of the radicals must have a perfect square in it. So if I get this answer wrong, and let's go to maybe the other assignment. This will allow me to get an answer wrong. So if I tell you that the answer is 10 radical 2, and I hit submit answer, and I am wrong, okay? So it's going to give me one more attempt, and I'm going to try and submit the same answer. Nope, sorry, you were wrong. It showed me the division, showed me how to simplify it. Now, when I go back, right, I can see here, that's okay, I still have a 0, but there was no penalty assigned to me, so I can still try and solve a problem. Now, I'll be able to see on my side that, Mr. Hurt got one wrong. I'll be able to see what they got, what they put in as the answer, and that will allow me to help to see what's going on. All right, so again, there's a lot of resources here, a lot of tools. Please use them to your advantage, okay? You'll see a third assignment when you look at this. That'll be, Quadratic Formula Day 1. And again, you're using the skills from this to practice that. So if you have any questions at all, please reach out to one of us. We're here to help you. We're here to be a sounding board for you. So I hope you guys all have a great day. And again, I'll see you with another assignment on Wednesday.